All right, welcome back to another episode of Brotherly Love in the District. Tristan here, along with Jacob, and Jacob want to tell him what we're going to get into today.
Yes, so this week, we're going to go over week one in the NFL, how our teams did, and we're going to do a little preview into week two. Next, we're actually going to go into baseball. Today is actually Roberto Clemente Day, so I have something to talk about that. And also, we got to talk about the wild card race. And finally, we're going to talk about hockey and a little bit and some comments that John Tortorella made. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, so we'll start off the so it being that last week we didn't end up getting an episode out. We didn't get out the rest of our 53 man roster review with the Eagles. So I was just thinking we'll kind of tack that on in there just as we're talking about the Eagles game and the Washington game, just because I mean a lot of people looking at the stats, the box score, a lot of people got snapped. So I mean they're really they're I'll just kind of talk about everything a little bit. But with that, we can start with the Eagles, and they get a tight 38-35 win in Detroit, which right now, okay, everyone, I don't think people understand like how fast Detroit came out of the gate. The Eagles almost choked it, so that wasn't ideal. But I mean, overall, the game was played pretty well. Jalen Hurts had a strong game, aside from him starting 0 for 5, which you made sure to text me about during the game. But and the Lions scored on their first drive, but again, there was nothing to worry about. So the thing that I think everyone kind of lets fly over their head is one, it's the first week of the season. People still have to work out all their kinks and everything. Like you're just getting into the start of the season and have to still have yet to get everything down. So tackling's still going to be missing a little bit. There's going to be certain timings off and everything like that. So when they went down and scored on the first drive, I wasn't worried. With that, number two, Detroit was rocking. That place was going crazy. And I think one of the reasons, tagging into my third one, I think one of the reasons that Detroit was so hard to play was I think the Hard Knocks series helped them out a ton, because I think there was just a huge backing to Detroit since they got the Hard Knocks series. You know, when you watch a show or something and it's just about a team or whatever, and it just gives you like kind of tingles about them or something like that. Like, I think that's what everyone had it with Detroit. And Detroit's offense is really good. They have one of the better offensive lines in the league, which is odd coming from, Detroit almost going winless last season. But then you look at the rest of their weapons, as long as Jared Goff plays this season, which if you watched our NFL team tier list, you'll hear me say this in that too. Detroit is under the radar, gonna be a pretty good team this season. I don't think they're gonna make a playoff spot, but they have a chance to win, I think, between 5 and 7 games, maybe even 8, depending on their schedule. But as long as Jared Goff can play somewhat decent, then they have a solid shot. First off, DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams might make up one of the top rushing duos in the league. I
Yeah,
would say
DeAndre Swift is a ridiculous player, and we saw that he had 15 carries for 144 yards.
He was averaging 9.6 yards per carry.
Yeah, that's a little scary considering we're playing them next week. We'll get into that a little more later, but yeah.
And then Jamal Williams is another guy who just comes in. He only averaged 2.5 yards per carry, but he had 11 carries. He had 12 total touches for 30 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 goal line rushes for touchdowns. But those two make up a really solid rushing duo. And then in their receiving core, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who came off and played insanely well last season when, no one thought they had anyone worth playing. They signed DJ Chark this season. They signed Josh Reynolds, who isn't that big of a deal, but he's still like their safety blanket. And then they have TJ Hawkinson, who could be one of the better tight ends in the league, top 5. And then DeAndre Swift again in the pass catching game, Jamal Williams in the pass catching game. I think ultimately the reason that this game even got close was the fourth quarter, the defense was just tired. The conditioning was struggling. The team didn't play in the preseason, the Eagles, at least. They played their starters for one drive in the first game. And after that, they might have sprinkled in some defensive and offensive starters on the line and stuff like that. But they didn't play their major starters at all during the preseason, except for that first drive. So I think it just came down to the conditioning. Jared Goff didn't break 100 yards until the last play of the third quarter, 100 yards passing. Now that doesn't look great because then in the fourth quarter he had roughly 100 yards passing just in the fourth quarter, but the the Detroit offense played schemed up the Eagles defense really well. They made it so the Eagles defensive line had no time to get to the quarterback. He was up and throwing the pass immediately. In the first half, he only had a couple dropbacks. Everything else was designed either on the run or as soon as he snapped the ball was out of his hands. I mean, it came down to, I think week one is the hardest game to judge, not only because is it the messiest, like in, I don't want to say routine, but fundamentals. Not only is it the messiest in fundamentals, but you also have the entire off season to game plan and scheme for the team you're playing. So I think this was just a fluke in the way that Detroit schemed up their game. Overall, I think they played well. Jalen Hurts, he passed 18 of 32, 243 yards, and then rushed for another 90 and a touchdown. Miles Sanders had a really good game, 13 rushes for 96 yards, 7.4 per carry, one touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell, 5 for 20 with a touchdown. Boston Scott, 4 for 10 with a touchdown. And my player of the game personally,
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown, 10 receptions and 155 yards.
He didn't get a touchdown, but he just got so many yards over the open field.
The one, like, there were a couple really good plays. There were a couple two really good passes that I wanted to mention from Jalen Hurts. Everyone was saying how Jalen Hurts needs to grow and Jalen Hurts needs to do this, needs to do that. He needs to, not run as much, which this game he ran a lot. He bailed out the team quite a bit, but the Lions defense was all over the field. They were blitzing like 7 every play. So I don't even blame the offensive line. The Detroit defense was just sending everyone every play. So Jalen Hurts ran 17 times, which you don't want to see. You don't want him to see breaking double-digit rushes in a game. But there were 2 really good passes, both to A.J. Brown, because he was really the only non-running back who got the ball. Dallas Goedert had 3 receptions and Zach Pascal had 1. But other than that, 4 receptions for running backs total and 10 for A.J. Brown. But 2 passes.
I would have liked to see him take away some of those running attempts and like spread the ball around in terms of passing more. Devontae Smith should be involved in the offense more.
Yeah, Devontae Smith had 4 targets. There was only one that I saw that actually got to him. He dropped it. That was the only one that I saw. I didn't see the 4 total targets go to him.
Yeah, so I think they could work on that more, but you can't ask for like much more in terms of a week 1 game. You guys scored 38 points. You ended up winning. Yeah, I think your defense can work on some things because obviously they ran the ball all over you guys, and that's like supposed to be a strong point. I think the Lions, we kind of understood what they were. They were going to try and bank up the running backs, and hopefully that opens up their opportunities with St. Brown and Hawkinson. But I think it's an overall good game. Still need to work on some things, but AJ Brown is looking like an amazing signing. And it's looking like once again you're gonna have a top 5 run game this year, considering 3 running backs had a rushing touchdown and Jalen Hurts had a rushing touchdown. So
they had 216 total rushing yards, which was good. And I think
that's almost the amount of passing yards that Jalen Hurts had, and that's more passing yards than Jared Goff had.
That was balanced. They were running more balanced, but I think that was just like watered down by when they were up by 17. They were trying to rush the ball more to
yeah.
But
If it was a closer game, maybe it would have been different,
yeah,
and we would have seen the passing be spread around more. But
a couple things just to finish off the rest of this game. Two really good passes from Jalen Hurts. One was a pass down the sideline. AJ Brown just burned his corner right off the line and was wide open down the sideline. And this is one, it was hard to see on TV until they zoomed out so you could see. It's one that would have been easier to see on the all 22. When I watched it initially, I hated the pass because he threw it and it was a laser pass, and AJ Brown had to kind of fall down for it and roll for it to catch the ball. And I was thinking that was a terrible pass. If he let him, that was a touchdown. But then they zoomed out and they showed the all 22. There was a safety over top. And for Jalen Hurts to see the safety and read him running over to AJ Brown and make that beautiful throw, that was a really good pass. And then another one was, it was a third and long, I believe, or maybe a fourth and short right near the goal line, and they were going for it. And he threw a pass in a really tight window between two defenders, a linebacker and a corner, again to AJ Brown. He's shown growth. Again, like he showed bits of growth in this game, and that's all you can really ask for. So I think Jalen Hurts played well. He needs to rush less, but coming up in the next couple of weeks, obviously they won't have the time to scheme for the offense as much as Detroit did. I think that played a big factor. And
and I think the offenses that are coming up are going to be more difficult than Detroit's
I think
because
Detroit, or the defense is going to be more of an issue coming up, which Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he played decently, but obviously there's some difference between slot safety and
and
or slot
obviously
corner and safety.
he wasn't there for the full training camp, so I think that's something we have to take into account. And I think we saw this around the league, whether it's the Broncos looking a little like rusty because, correct me if I'm wrong, very little, if none of their starters really played the preseason, and I think we saw
I think
that.
most teams are doing that now. They're following the Rams.
Washington did, and for me, the Packers, they didn't, and I think it showed because Rodgers and his wide receivers looked completely out of sync, and obviously he wasn't there for the OTAs, and he didn't really start in the preseason, and I think that shows that this week you saw a lot of really rusty teams. The 49ers had a really disappointing game, and the bad teams who are just playing.
I would give the 49ers an exception, being that they were playing in a monsoon.
Well, yeah,
Obviously
they
they
are
should have
playing
beat
in
the
a
Bears,
monsoon,
but
and they do have a new quarterback, but you still expect more from that team because they. I've seen many um, reporters considering them a top 5 team in the league, and you'd expect them to be better considering they have one of the best. I'd say the best gadget guy in the league, bar none, Debo Samuel. So
oh
yeah,
yeah.
I think we saw a little rustiness. I'm interested to see what the Eagles do this upcoming week because after the Vikings Packers game, I think the Vikings are starting to look like a
You
legit
have
team.
no idea how nervous I am about that game,
Well,
which
yeah, Justin Jefferson had an amazing game, and they didn't really use Dalvin Cook to his full potential, so that's a little worrying.
yeah, we'll get to the Vikings game after we finish everything else. Ultimately, I think they played well. They need to get Jordan Davis involved more. And I think it was just the fact that they're trying to play their the guys who they consider, veterans, and get those guys in. But over time, I think they'll be like, okay, well, obviously Jordan Davis is a difference maker. With Jordan Davis on the field, they had significantly less success with the run. So I mean, obviously you look at that, the stats don't lie. They'll notice that. They'll start to put Jordan Davis in on rundowns more. They played him a little less. He only played 22 snaps in the game. So they need to notice that. But other than that, I think it was a solid game. They had a pick six. They won the turnover battle. Uh, Overall, I mean, the team just looked good on a whole. Aside from that fourth quarter defense, I like the way they played, and I'm looking forward to the season. Jalen Hurts needs to learn how to spread the ball out on offense and on defense. They just need to work on their conditioning, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson needs to get used to playing safety more. And other than that, I mean, those are really the only two negatives that I think they need to improve on. Right, the two biggest negatives that they need to
Yeah.
improve. Obviously, you work all season.
Yeah, so going into the Commanders game, it was really, for me, it was an up and down game because there's a lot of like really good positives to come out of the game, and there's a few really bad things that I think we really need to address. But going into the positives, Carson Wentz had the most like
He had a game.
he had like a 2017 Carson Wentz game where he plays amazing, makes a few like plays that make you question what on earth were you thinking, but then comes back with some amazing throws. So starting in the first quarter, the offense came out rolling. Curtis Samuel had an amazing game. He's looking like what we thought he was, which is like Debo Samuel light. If
Yeah,
that makes
Debo Samuel light.
you remember, apps had the light version.
This is
That's
Curtis
what
Samuel's the demo
Samuel is.
version of Debo.
Yeah, that and he played like it. He had an amazing game.
That's when you ask your mom to get McDonald's or mom, can we get a Debo? And she's like,
We
we
have
have
Debo
Debo
at
at
home.
home. It's Curtis
Yeah.
Samuel.
There was a few throws here and there that were a little high that I think he should have made, but then he made some amazing throws, like the throws to Jahan Dotson, the first touchdown. That was a great throw, put it right on the money. And Jahan Dotson is looking like an issue. His route running and his hands, considering he's a rookie, it's ridiculous. And I'll admit, I
I
was
was
a
just
little
about to say,
wary. I
yeah,
was wary about him going into
this is Devontae Smith 2.0 in this show.
I mean, pretty much, because I looked at him. He's not that fast. He's not really
He's not a big guy.
No, but he has some of the best route running I think we've seen from a rookie in terms of Washington in a while. I think even as a rookie, his route running is better than Terry, but obviously a small sample. But the skipping forward, the catch he made to ultimately win the game, that was one of the most impressive catches I've ever seen. And that was actually a great throw by Wentz. He put it where the defender couldn't really see it or get it, but he put it where Jahan Dotson could perfectly catch it. And credit to our offensive line, they gave him enough time to allow that play to develop. And I think there's a few plays here and there where I would have liked them to play a little better. And obviously, I think that's due to like guys like Trey Turner missing. But I think ultimately it's a great game for the offense, even though Carson Wentz had two of the most like questionable picks I've ever seen. One of them,
Even worse than his left-handed picks from last season.
well, not that bad, but one of them, he completely stared down Jahan Dotson when he had a defender right behind him, and I just don't understand.
Telegraphed it.
Yeah, I don't understand why he made the throw to begin with, because it was pretty close. And then another one was on a screen pass, and he threw it pretty much blind into a group of our offensive line and their defenders, and it got picked. But he had one of the best throws I think I've ever seen down the sideline to Terry McLaurin, where he dropped it over two defenders. Terry was down the right sideline. He had a player behind him and a player to his left. And Carson Wentz just dropped it right in there for a touchdown. So ultimately, great game by the offense. McLaurin looked great. Samuel looked great. Even Logan Thomas and Armani Rogers, they had some good plays. Dotson looked great. The thing I'm worried about is our defense. Our defensive line actually looked pretty good. They had a lot of great pressures, and at the end of the game, their pressure caused Trevor Lawrence to intercept the ball. But our run defense kind of sucked, which is a little worrying considering that's supposed to be what we're better at in terms of our defense.
That hit that Derek Forrest put
Oh
on
my gosh.
Travis Etienne.
That
I thought
was,
Etienne was going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks after
I mean,
that.
Derek Forrest, even when Cam Curl comes back, Derek Forrest needs to be on the field. He had an interception. He had a great game, but James Robinson had 11 carries for 66 yards, which is a little worrying considering we're playing DeAndre Swift next week.
Yeah, DeAndre Swift. If the Washington defense can't tighten up and hold down the rushing, DeAndre Swift is going to have a field day next week.
It's going to be we cannot afford to make as many mistakes as we did. We kind of got lucky. Jamin Davis, he had a few nice rushes, but his coverage, especially against ATN, wasn't very good. To his credit, I don't think some of them were his fault. I think some of our coverage schemes sucked. on a few of them, we had Jamin Davis covering Christian Kirk, which is a truly awful idea. So I think we need to address the coverages and the run defense a little bit more.
Here,
And we gave up too many big plays. I think we need to limit that. Our third down defense, I think, did get better.
Jack Del Rio just came out this just got submitted today.
He said
article.
Jamin Davis had a so-so game.
Yeah, he said he didn't play very well last week. He's got to play better. I know he expects to play better, and he'll be challenged to play better.
Yeah, I'm a little wary about that because I think Del Rio and Rivera knew that the linebacking situation was going to be like this ever since the end of last season, and I think they should have done a better job in bringing in more veteran presence to take that pressure off a second-year player. We're expecting him to be the quarterback of the defense, and it's clear that it seems like he's not really ready for that. He still needs to develop. He's shown some good plays here and there, but he hasn't played good. I think some of it
is second-year player as a first-round pick. You need to be making strides.
You do need to meet.
I know that's better strides, odd coming from a Eagles fan where they just traded away their first-round draft pick from a couple seasons ago for a bag of chips and some pickles. But yeah, that's definitely an NFL thing. That's not a specific team thing. If you're a first-round draft pick, you need to be making strides in your second year to being a difference maker on the field for your team. Maybe whether it's in the NFL or not, like in the NFL wide for any other team, you need to at least be making a difference for your team that drafted you.
Yeah. Like I said, the defensive line is actually looking significantly better. I think hiring that new defensive line coach and bringing in Ryan Kerrigan as an assistant is really paying dividends. I'm excited for when Chase Young comes back because in the offseason, he was actually working with Von Miller. And one thing I was a little worried about Chase Young, he seemed to be relying on his physical gifts a little too much. It just seems like he was trying to run past the offensive lineman every single play and not really work moves. Like if he gets like some basic moves down paired with his physical gifts, he's going to be a monster. And I hope it comes to that. But overall, I think for a first game back, it was amazing. Carson Wentz he's looking like that guy.
Wow, that is a bold statement off of week one performance. Come on.
I mean, he had 4 touchdowns, and some of them were really great throws. He made some great reads. He made some truly awful reads. And once why can't I remember the rookie running back's name?
Brian Robinson.
Yeah, once he comes back, I think we're going to add a whole nother level to our game because Antonio Gibson had an amazing game. He had 14 carries, 58 yards, but what impressed me most, he had 7 receptions for 72 yards, and I think that's how we need to use him. Run him around the edges, not up the middle. I think that's a little too worrying, and we've seen that, but use him as a gadget guy, and I think this offense, I think it could be top. I think it will be top 15. Top 10, I think is a little bit of a stretch right now. It's way too early to tell, but there's a lot of things I'm excited about, but some things I'm worried about. The secondary didn't look as bad as I thought they would, but they're going to need to tighten up more.
It's a week overall. I think both teams played pretty well week one.
Yeah.
And then okay, so we won't normally do this every week, but just because it's week one and there were some surprises, I also want to talk about the Giants game and the Cowboys game. I want to do the Cowboys game last. The Giants came out and surprised everyone and beat the
Titans. Saquon had a monster.
Yeah, Saquon looks like now again, I don't want to be coming out like too early and saying something because he plays like this when he is healthy. He is a difference maker for anyone.
Yeah, but the problem is when he's healthy, that's the real issue.
Yeah, so he played insanely well. He had over 160 yards.
He had 100
rushing. Yeah, I don't think that was total. Yeah, he had 164 yards rushing,
And he had
and then
6
if you
receptions for 30 yards, so he had nearly 200 yards from
all purpose,
all purpose, yeah, which is
yeah,
an underrated stat, by the way.
that's he 18. He had 24 total touches, back to being the workhorse. And that was a game where they came from behind. So they were playing from behind most of the, if not all the game. And the defense tightened up at the end and kept the Titans from winning. So the Giants played really well in week 1. Still not someone not a team I'm worried about yet,
No,
but
I think they'll be a little better than I personally thought, but I still don't think they're going to be that great because I still think like there are still some worries in terms of how was Danny Jones going to play because Saquon Barkley, he's not going to have that type of game every single week.
yeah, there are going to be teams
It's
that
im-
start to scheme
yeah,
up
it's
for him.
impossible to ask for that or expect it. So that was an impressive performance, but I'm still wary.
And then the other one that I want to talk about
The Cowboys,
is
they
the
played
Cowboys
awful.
game. And that wasn't even so the Cowboys are now without Dak 6 to 8 weeks. Jerry Jones tried to back out of it and say he could be back within 4 weeks. I don't know
Yeah.
about that one though. I think that's a little bit of a stretch coming off of a surgically fixed thumb. I don't know if that one's going to be four
Yeah,
weeks.
even when he comes back, there's still going to
He's
be
not going to be the
issues.
same. And
No.
so last season, I mentioned this last season, or I want to say last week. Uh, Jerry Jones, or not Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott came back last season after he got injured, and he had, I want to say, the 27th worst QBR from weeks 9 to I believe 16. Uh, like so, the injuries affect him and the way he plays. So this is huge for Cowboys fan because their entire team has now been destroyed. They have no wide receiver 1, no wide receiver 2. I
I mean,
I mean, I
they have
guess
CeeDee
CD,
Lamb, but it's
but
his
he's not a
first year as
true
a
number one. He's a
no.
he's a slot guy mostly. He's not really an outside guy. He's an inside slot who runs good routes. Uh so you don't have a wide receiver 1 or 2 with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper gone. Your offensive line is torched. Ezekiel Elliott is now going to have to be the focus on getting the ball, which
I
means
mean, he played good. He had 10 carries for 52 yards. He was averaging 5.2. He had a great game, but again, they were
and but
reluctant to
now
give him the
if you think
ball.
about it, but now okay, now the offense knows where the ball is going most of the time.
Him and Pollard are going to get the
Yeah.
majority of the touches,
So
and that's easy to scheme.
defenses can scheme for that. Dallas played terribly. They're without Dak. I'm going to take my bold take right now and say Dallas's season is just about shot now.
Yeah, we saw this in 2020 where they lost Dak, and we saw they kind of fell apart because yes, I think their defense is decent, but it's not going to be good enough to carry them these first whatever 6 to 8 weeks. They're going to lose most of their games because I don't I I'm not going to trust Cooper Rush to lead them to victories because their defense isn't built on just stonewalling. Even though they did hold the Bucks to 19 points, but Leonard Fournette had 120 yards. Tom Brady, who hasn't played since last year, he didn't really attend the OTAs, started to have a decent game. And so, yeah, the Cowboys defense, it's based on getting turnovers, but that also allows them that they give up a lot of big plays, but they count on those turnovers and they count on their offense being able to score a lot and often. And I just don't think they're going to be able to do that.
So and their schedule isn't forgiving either. So 8 weeks from now is their bye week, and their schedule up until then is the Super Bowl losers in the Bengals, at the Giants, against the Commanders, at the Rams, at the Eagles, against the Lions, and against the Bears. That's not a forgiving schedule. The only one
No,
that you are like should 99% chance win would be the Bears. But even the way the Bears played on Sunday, I
I
still wouldn't
mean,
use that.
they held the 49ers offense,
10 points.
yeah, 10 points. And if you look at the Giants, their team is based off of running, and the Bucks ran all over them. If you look at our team, we have a very tricky offense where we have 3 wide receivers who could get the ball at any time, which is a very dangerous thing. And our defense going up against that depleted Cowboys offense, I'd have to trust us to win that game. So it's going to be very tough.
Yeah, and then Super Bowl defending champs, the
The
Rams,
Bengals?
the Eagles, who
Yeah,
proved that their offense has so many different assets to attack from.
I mean, and
It's going to
like,
be a rough go for
yeah,
them.
they're not going to be able to stop the offense. Yes, I think you're going to be able to have Micah Parsons kind of spy Jalen Hurts the whole game. I think you're going to have to rely on that. And
But even that,
wow,
he's proved that he can still drop back and deliver some strikes.
yeah, AJ Brown. I mean, even if you put Diggs on him, AJ Brown is still going to get separation.
Please don't joke like AJ Brown would actually get covered by Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah, and even if that a miracle happens, you still have Dallas Goddard. So even if you switch Parsons onto him, their linebackers are still going to be preoccupied with the weapon. So
Exactly. So I
the
mean, their
matchup
team
nightmares
is,
are coming up for the Cowboys, and I'd have to agree with you when you said that their season's kind of over because their team was banking on Dak Prescott.
yeah, I think going into this season, I believed that Dak Prescott's first real season started now, where he didn't have all the weapons that he does.
And he
And
didn't
now with him
play
out,
great
their
when
team is just,
he didn't play great even when he was in the game. He was
yeah,
14 for 29, 134 yards, and an interception. That's not great.
nope. So that's going to be interesting to see how that one turns out. Uh, but I just wanted to talk about this. Like I said, we're not going to do that every week. It was just
No.
this week was just a surprising week overall. The Bears beat the 49ers. Houston tied with the Colts.
The
Uh,
Steelers defense looked
had 4
amazing.
picks.
It kind of sucks I didn't start them in fantasy, but I did have the Bills defense, which got me 18 points, and I beat my co-host here.
It's week 1. We still got another time to meet. Then the what other shocking things
Well,
happened? The Panthers and Browns game actually looked good.
Seahawks beat the
Geno
Broncos.
Smith. Yeah, Geno Smith.
Yeah, and I don't know what the Broncos coaching staff was doing, but I'm pretty sure everybody has better clock management skills than the Broncos
Did you see?
coaching staff.
I saw a video, and so you know how they have the Peyton and Eli.
Yeah, I was watching that
Yeah,
where Peyton was for 30
Peyton's
seconds.
sitting
Can we
there
get a
like this.
timeout?
I saw
Can we
someone
get a
count
timeout,
it.
please?
I saw someone put up a counter, and it was Peyton's timeouts and Broncos timeouts. Peyton called for a timeout 24 times, and the Broncos didn't call for one.
That was really fun to
They
watch
counted
because
every time he went like this.
yeah, and Eli said, like he tweeted when that clip was tweeted out, he said, I think Peyton wanted a timeout.
Yeah,
Watching Shannon Sharp with them as well, that's why I love the Manning cast. That was so great to watch. If you haven't seen that, please go watch it. But basically, it was 4th and 5. That instead of like calling a timeout immediately with 50
they even
seconds,
had multiple times to.
yeah, the
They
Broncos.
could have called it earlier too, like
The
not just at that
Broncos.
57 mark, but like on 2nd down and 3rd down to try to get that first.
Yeah, they didn't call a timeout. They wasted 30 seconds. They didn't even try and get 5 yards. They wasted 30 seconds, like chewed down the clock to try and make a 64-yard field goal to win it.
Which would have tied the 2nd best NFL history.
Why on earth was that the play call? Your offense could have easily made 5 yards.
Which I'm pretty sure, I want to say he had the distance, he just didn't have the width. The width was wrong.
Yeah, it just didn't go the right direction.
Yeah, they definitely should have played that differently. But that concluded a exciting week 1. I'm excited that football is back. I'm right into the good part of the season. NHL
tonight we have another game we get to watch. So
yeah, tonight's gonna be a good one. Chargers and the Chiefs.
Yeah, that I'm not sure who's gonna win that, considering the Chiefs offense looked ridiculous this week.
Loaded in week 1. But looking forward, let's talk about the Eagle. We'll talk about the Washington game first, because that one is on Sunday. Against you guys are in Detroit, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Detroit, they put up a great game against you guys, but if we're being honest, it's a game that we should win. I mean, if we just like shore up on our run game just a little bit, I think we should win because our offense, I mean, the Lions defense, I don't think is not really that great by any stretch. They have
Their
Aiden
Lions
Hutchinson.
the Lions defense is definitely weaker, but if the defensive coordinator does what he did against the Eagles, where he is rushing his entire defense essentially the entire game, it's going to make it a lot more
It's
interesting
going to
because
make it
Carson Wentz doesn't have the
interesting, but
mobility.
we have that's what our offense is kind of built on is throwing short to Doxson,
Oh, yeah, but it's
get to Curtis Samuel, to JD McKissick, to Antonio Gibson. So, and we have a pretty decent offensive line. We have the weapons to beat them. And if we just get enough time, I think we're going to have a very good chance of McLaurin getting open or Doxson because of his insane route running or Curtis Samuel. I just think it's a game that we ultimately should win. And if we're looking forward to week 3, it's important to build that momentum because you're obviously going to have a tough matchup coming up soon. And I think one of the best chances of beating you guys is going into that game 2-0 with a lot of momentum. So I think it's very important considering I think we're going to be fighting for wild card. These are the games we need to win, and these are the games we need to shore up some things on before we start playing the bit bigger and better teams. So I think
now
it, I think it could be tough, but it's a game we should win.
I'm going to go the opposite way. And I think Detroit, even they're in Detroit again. That place was rocking in week 1. They're coming off of a tough loss. I think they've shown they still have something to prove. I think Detroit has a good potential to win this game. On the matchup predictor has on ESPN gives Washington a 55.8% chance to win. But it's going to be hard to the offense is definitely going to have to line up those quick passes. Don't keep Carson Wentz in the pocket too long. He obviously doesn't have the Jalen Hurts mobility, and he doesn't have the same mobility he used to because
But he
even
still got at the pocket a few times,
yeah,
and our
he
offensive line had some really great plays. Like the throw to Jahan Dotson, they did an all-out blitz, and they gave him enough time for Jahan Dotson to develop his route and for him to make a great throw. And even after he made a great throw, he was still a few seconds away from getting sacked. So
I think
I have faith in them for this week because our offensive line, I think, is able to deal with their scheme of trying to probably all out rush us.
the only other thing that I would say is one, you were saying how the rushing defense was struggling.
Yes.
DeAndre Swift is a different animal. And two,
But
also,
but this week he was out of practice today though. He does have an ankle injury, I believe.
I don't think it's anything to keep him out. We'll double check on that while we're talking about it. But even then, uh, another thing is your secondary is still, it says questionable, non-participant at Thursday's practice. Oh, there's a good chance he doesn't play. If he didn't practice on Thursday, there's a good chance he doesn't play on Sunday.
Who, Swift?
Yeah.
Wait, it's not, they said it's nothing to worry about, but he did not play on Thursday, so maybe it's just they're gonna try and rest him for this week.
Yeah. If
But
he
if you look at how our defense like matches up with their offense, if we're just able to limit him enough, Jared Goff isn't the quarterback that's gonna absolutely torch our secondary. Even though that I still think that's our weakness, and but our defensive line is playing better. I just don't think Jared Goff is the guy to really beat us because if you look at last week, we had a lot of great pressures. Payne and Jonathan Allen had great games. They actually each of them I think blocked a pass. So
I'm looking up real quick. Hang on. Because so there was still 275 yards passing on you guys. They still have some weapons in Christian. I don't know if I'd really consider Christian Kirk a weapon, but
he had a
he had
great game.
117.
But I think a lot of that was down to our coverage scheming because I think it was still pretty bad. Because, like I said earlier, Jamin Davis was covering wide receivers a few plays. So I mean, it should. Our defense should get better towards next week, and
Looking
that's
at
what
it
I'm on.
as a whole picture, I think Detroit has a pretty good chance just because the defense hasn't proved that they are that stacked defense that they're supposed to be. I think
Yeah, that's fair
Amon-Ra
enough.
St.
But
Brown
you can
has
say
potential.
this. You can say the same thing about the Lions. They gave up 38 points.
But I see what you're saying there is like so basically what you're trying to get at is it's going to be a high scoring shootout. I will agree with that. I think it could be
When
a
it
high
comes down to it, our offense is based off of passing and theirs is rushing. I trust the passing offense to have a better chance of outscoring the running offense.
I'm still going to give the nod to the Lions. I think they're a decent team.
I do too. I think
It's going to be a close game either
yeah,
way. I
I,
don't doubt that in
yeah,
any
I
way,
think
shape, or form.
it's for a good portion of the game. I could see it being a very tough game, but we're counting on the defense not making as much mistakes as we did last week and starting to shore up and come into their own because all we need, all we need to really do is shore up that run defense, which I think we can because that's how our linebackers are built. Davis, he's still more of a run, he's he seems to really spy the running back a little bit more. Cole Holcomb, he's a decent
Downhill backer.
yeah, and if Cam Curl comes back this week, which I don't know if he will, we still have Derek Forrest who can play in the box because we saw that hit on Travis Etienne where he completely laid him out. So
Lit him up. That
yeah,
hit was.
I'm
I was
Washington.
getting excited for that hit, and I'm not even a Washington
Yeah,
fan. I was like,
I'm
oh,
I'm a Washington fan, so I'm still worried. But this is a game. If we're looking at it objectively, even though I do think their offense is going to be good, this is a game we should win, and we need to win because down the line, it's going to help us in terms of the wild card.
going over to the Eagles game. This one makes me nervous. I think this one could be an Eagles loss.
Yeah,
It's
I
in
think
Philadelphia, so it's the home opener, but it is a
it's a tough
rough
game,
game.
Tristan.
Just what with what Justin Jefferson did to the Packers, not that the Packers secondary is anything, fancy and nice, but still Justin Jefferson popped off. I want to say he had 9 receptions for 186 yards. Wow,
Yeah,
they're giving the nod to the Eagles. They think the Eagles have a better chance of 9
yeah,
receptions,
but
184 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Justin Jefferson.
Dalvin Cook had 20 carries for 90 yards. And the Vikings defense made Aaron Rodgers look bad. They were
They
pressuring
gave
him in
Aaron
the
Rodgers
pocket.
hell.
They gave him a tough game. And
I think something obviously you never count Aaron Rodgers out. It's Aaron Rodgers, but
yeah,
the weapons that Jalen Hurts has around him are
are
10
better than
times
Aaron Rodgers.
better than Aaron Rodgers.
But again, Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback.
Yeah. So I think it's good. It's another good game. I think the Vikings. So when I was looking at the schedule at the beginning of the season, this was one of those games that I thought could go either way. And obviously, I think they had 5 of them. It was like the Vikings, the Saints, the Bucks. I think they don't play the Bucks this season, but it was teams like those. I'm like, those could go either way. And obviously they're going to lose some of those. I think this is one of those that could go their way. And if they were to lose to the Vikings, it wouldn't be one that I would be surprised with. They
Yeah,
have
and it's
insane.
not one I'd be too mad at because if you look at it, they have Kirk Cousins, who's a solid quarterback. They have Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. They have Adam Thielen, Irv Smith Jr. They have an insane offense. And if you're
Irv
looking at
Smith didn't do anything in
he
week
didn't
one.
do he didn't do anything. But what linebacker do you have to cover him?
uh they have Kaiser White, who played safety in college and is more of a coverage backer than anything else. So I'm not worried about the one thing I'm more worried about is Justin Jefferson and how they're going to double him up. That's the only thing I'm worried about. If they find a way to shut down Justin Jefferson, that makes this game
It makes
10
it
times
easier,
easier.
but you still have to worry about Thielen and
That
Dalvin Cook.
Thielen, I'm not worried about as much. And it's so basically what I'm thinking. If I were, this is obviously 100 times simplified than it actually will be, being that it's coming from me, not an NFL defensive coordinator. But I'm thinking you have, obviously one of your outside corners in Darius Slayer, James Bradbury on him. And then you have a safety over top of Justin Jefferson at all times. They need to be doubling Justin Jefferson at all times. And then you have Avonte Maddox in the slot. The only issue there is since Justin Jefferson is so versatile, when he gets put into the slot, that's going to be an issue. But if he's on the outside, then you have one of the outside corners with a safety over top to cover. And then on the inside, you have Avonte Maddox on KJ Osborne. You have the other outside corner on Adam Thielen. I'm happy about that. On rundowns, you put Jordan Davis in the middle to stuff the rundowns. They need to start using Jordan Davis more in the middle. They're going to look at the film this week. They're going to see, hey, with Jordan Davis, we did way better filling the gaps and stopping the run. So they'll notice that. I'm not worried about it as much. Don't get me wrong. Dalvin Cook is an amazing running back. Adam Thielen still doing work in his 30s and putting in good work too. KJ Osborne is not a third receiver to scoff at. He's shown flashes, and they also have Eagles legend Jalen Reagor over there. So they
yeah, he's always been a weapon.
It's not a team to scoff at. Kirk Cousins is definitely a solid quarterback when he has the weapons and the time, but I think this is one that'll go either way. Obviously, I want to say the Eagles are going to win it because I'm an Eagles fan, but I can't even be too sure of that because it's going to be a close.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably more scared about this game than you are about the Lions game.
Yeah, I have the Vikings winning because I think the Vikings will look at what happened last week and
I think this is one that Vikings.
Yeah, they'll bank on Dalvin Cook and they'll try and really like wear down your defense over time and keep their defense off the field and keep them fresh. And this kind of happened last year where your offense was put behind and it like they're trying to force them to really play from behind and make a lot more risks. So that's why I'm leaning towards the Vikings. But if the Eagles were to win, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's going to be a really good game. But I want to look. I like the Eagles receivers against the Vikings secondary a little bit more than I like the Vikings. I can't even say that because the Vikings wide receivers are insane. So
they're ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I like the Eagles receivers against it's a give and take, I guess, because obviously I think the Vikings receivers against the Eagles secondary is way better, but I think the Eagles receivers against the Vikings secondary is still going to be a good matchup for the Eagles. So either way, I think it's probably going to be another high scoring game. And airing the ball out a lot, but I don't see, Miles Sanders getting another 90 some rushing yard game. I don't see Dalvin Cook approaching 90 yards either. I don't think there will be a 100-yard rusher in this game at all. Maybe
if there was to be one, it'd be Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, but I don't know if they'll even break 100 yards as a team rushing either team. I think it's going to be very aired out.
No, I think the Eagles definitely will. I think you're over it. I think you're overestimating the defense a little too much. I think both. Obviously, you're a running team. You're a running team, and then
they're not trying to be a running team this season, so it doesn't. They're
you
not.
You had three running backs for 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, but okay, 2 of them, Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, combined for 9 total rushes. But the two that they scored were on the goal line.
It's still on the goal line, but if you look at it, they're gonna try. You're obviously gonna try and run because you have a great offensive line. And if you look at the Vikings, they're gonna look at what happened last week. DeAndre Swift almost had 150 yards and around 15 carries. They're obviously gonna look at that and try to exploit it.
I think people look at last season to like when they totally switched their offense to the run and bank off that too much. The Eagles don't want to be a running team. Yes, it worked for them last season, but Nick Sirianni was a wide receiver in high school and college. He came from under Frank Reich, who was a quarterback who loved to throw the ball. So I mean, like, he is a throwing type of coach, and he wanted to throw the ball last season, but he switched because he needed to run. now that he doesn't need to run and they have weapons, they actually have a one receiver, they don't want to pass. They're obviously still going to run the ball. And I don't think they're going to do like they did in the beginning of last season where they ran the ball like 5 times a game. But I still think it'll be way more pass heavy. I would say it's going to be a 75-25 split pass to run. And so, like, when people are saying the Eagles are a running team, they're not anymore. They're not even balanced. They're trying to shift completely to pass.
Well, they're
Last week
trying
was
to shift,
different.
but you
Last
need to play off of your strengths. And if you're looking at it in terms of your defense, like if we look at what happened last week, you only really got one receiver really involved if we're looking at it completely objectively.
last week was also a unicorn game because they were up by 17, so they were trying to kill the clock. They didn't want to rush. They ran the ball because they had the scoreboard on their side. It's
But again,
when
if
you're looking at the
if the
scoreboard, this
Viking
game
if the Vikings
totally
understand this, then they're going to try and scheme towards that. I just think you need to like not go into a game with like, oh, we're going to pass no matter what. I just think you need to take what
no,
comes to
I
you.
don't think it's going to be that way either. But I think coming down to it, when it's a close game, if like say it's the third quarter with 7 minutes left, when they're looking at their playbook, I think they're going to be looking more towards passes than rushes. I'm not saying they're not going to run the ball at all. I'm just saying coming down to it, it's going to be more pass heavy because both offenses are a more pass heavy offense. That's essentially what I'm getting down to. I'm not saying that neither team is going to run, but I'm saying that it's going to be split way more in favor of the passing as opposed to the rushing.
Well, it typically is, but going back on your point where you said you don't think you don't think the Vikings are going to reach 100 yards rushing. I don't exactly agree with that because if we're looking at last week, because that's the most recent thing you have to go off of. Your weakness was in your run defense, and the Vikings have one of the best running backs in the league. So if you look at it, like your strength is in more of your terms of your secondary than it is like your ability to stop the run. So I think the Vikings are going to try and run the ball more than they will passing.
Well, there's only one way to find out, isn't there? And
Wait a
that
few
will be on
days.
Monday night. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that game. Going over to baseball though, that's the Phillies coming off of a bit of a struggle. They had a little bit. They're now going for the sweep tonight against the Marlins, finally. But the Phillies were struggling for a bit. They dropped down in the wild card. San Diego overtook them, and they came back, played against Washington, swept them, looking to go for, I believe, their 6th win in a row, to beating the Marlins tonight. And they have Wheeler coming back. I actually need to look what's going on with Castellanos because he's been out for a while, and I have no idea when he's supposed to be coming back, but it's the wild card race, and I still want Philadelphia to drop a little bit further down because they're still ahead San Diego by about a game and a half.
Yeah, going to the Nats, we're actually playing like somewhat decent baseball. We're still losing, but if we're looking at it, CJ Abrams is actually having a good stretch of games. Meneses is, Alex Call. So like we're closing 100 wins or 100 losses for this season. I don't think we'll reach that. I think next season we can get like only like 80 losses, maybe 90. But other than that, I want to talk. Today's Roberto Clemente Day, and I've heard a lot of reports that a lot of legends are at Citi Field for the game tonight, as well as Roberto Clemente's 3 sons. So it's possible that they could be retiring his number league wide tonight, considering there's a lot of baseball legends at the game, as well as Roberto Clemente's family. So something to look out for.
One So the going off of the things I said earlier about the Phillies had won three out of 9 games against inferior opponents. They had a 3-game against the Pirates, they won 2 there, a 3-game against the Diamondbacks, only won 1 there, and they got swept against the Giants. Since then, they are going on to their 9th game tonight, but out of the 8 that they had after that, they are 7-1 in their last 8. The Phillies need to figure out a way to stay consistent going into the playoffs, especially since it looks like they're going to be playing the Braves or the Mets.
You need to get hot now. You can't count on the fact that, oh, we'll start playing great baseball in the playoffs.
And they also I'm gonna double check, but I'm pretty sure the the Brett the Bretts the Bretts and the Maves
Correct.
the Mets and the Braves are two teams that give them trouble all season long. That's
Yeah.
actually so they split there, they
And
lost
either
there.
one, like say you face the Mets, you're going to be facing either DeGrom or Scherzer, which is that's not great. And if the Braves, you may be facing Spencer Strider or Max Fried, which again is not great. That's not ideal.
The last time I remember Spencer Strider playing against the Phillies, he pitched, I want to say 8 innings and had 12 strikeouts.
Yeah. Would you rather face that or DeGrom or Scherzer?
Neither. I want to face St. Louis.
Even then, that's not exactly a ideal matchup because they
That's a
have
more offensive matchup for them
yeah, they have the
and
two
pitching
front
is.
runners for the NL MVP and Goldschmidt and Arenado.
Let's see. So, oh wait, I was looking at. I don't think they've won a single series against the Mets this season.
That is
I'm
not
looking at it, and I don't think they've won one series against the Mets. I think they're about even with the Braves, uh, like series wise, winning and losing a series. They're about even with the Braves, but other than that, they struggle against the Mets. I don't think they've won a single series against the Mets. And
good.
it's gonna be in New York for the most part, which means it's gonna be a rough postseason for the Phillies.
Yeah.
They need a oh, that's who I was looking for. Castellanos. I want to see when he's coming back. Uh and Reese Hoskins got hit with a pitch yesterday in the hand. So right now he's day to day. They took him out after he got hit and put in Alex Bohm first. So I will say though, like even with that, the infield I'm not worried about as much. They had a point where they were playing, I believe it was against the Marlins the first time in the first series. This is their second series in the last week against the Marlins. In the first series, so Castellanos should be coming back. He got put on 10-day IL on September 4th. So he should be coming back any day now. Wheeler should be coming back soon. He threw a bullpen session on Tuesday and will throw again Friday, which is tomorrow for as we are recording right now. But uh the and Reese Hoskins x-rays on his right hand came back negative, and he isn't expected to be in the lineup for tonight, but he should be good coming up relatively soon. But like I was saying, in that first series against the Marlins, Edmundo Sosa had 2 home runs in 2 games. Defensively, he's one of the better players on the infield that they have defensively, and he's been putting up numbers as a Philly. And it came down to the point where Rob Thompson was like, do I take out Edmundo Sosa, even though he has the hot hand, and let Bryson Stott play, or do I put Bryson Stott in and just hope he still plays? Because I mean, Bryson Stott isn't terrible either. Like he's still playing well. It's just a matter of he had 2 offensive weapons, and they're both good defensively too, and he just didn't know what to do. So defensively, I'm not worried with the Reese Hoskins injury. Let him take his break. Let him relax for a little bit because you could
You
still
got
have
Derek Hall. You'll be fine.
no. Well, no, they're gonna play Alex Bohm at first. Alex Bohm is like 6'5". He's a first
Well,
baseman at like
I was
peak.
more referring to the offensive side of the ball. You have somebody to replace his bat.
That's I mean the thing there is they don't have space for Derek Hall even if they wanted to because Bryce Harper's healthy again. So he's DH. He's not ready to throw yet. So he can't play right field. So right now in the outfield, they're having Veerling, Marsh, and Schwarber rotate around, and then who is their other outfielder that they throw in occasionally? They
Did
have
you
a couple
mention
different.
Marsh?
No, yeah, Marsh I mentioned. Guthrie,
Rara? Oh,
Nick
Guthrie.
Maton and Dalton Guthrie. They've had rotating in there too. So they, but they would like Brandon Marsh, Kyle Schwarber, and Veerling to be the mainstays. But the outfield is a lot rougher off right now than the infield. The infield, I'm not quite worried about, even with the Hoskins injury. Let him sit for a little bit so he can get his hand healthy for the playoffs. Right now, you're at a point as the Phillies, you're at a point where you're not gonna catch the Braves. You're not going to catch the Mets. You can't get the division. You're in a wild card spot no matter what. And if you're looking at it as a head, as one of the heads of the team, you want to drop down into that third wild card because you want to play the Cardinals. You don't
But
want to
again,
play.
you want to go into the playoffs hot, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
dropping. That's very dangerous, and I'm not sure how that would work out.
I see what you're saying. Like they don't want to lose, but at the same time, so you don't want to lose, but at the same time, you also can't be focused on winning. Like they're in a good spot right now because they have the wild card on their side. I don't even think even if they even if they were to like somehow just drop out, I'm gonna pull up the standings real quick because I know the Brewers were close, but I don't know how close. Uh, but like they have the wild card basically in the bag, so they're in a good spot where they can kind of like make sure everyone is healthy going into the playoffs, and they don't have to worry about it. Uh, okay, don't give me the wild card page. That's cool. Uh, so the Milwaukee's 2 games behind San Diego. So they have 4.5 games on Milwaukee. So they basically have it in the bag. As long as they don't completely just fall apart, then they're pretty much set for right now. So I'm not quite worried about it. I think they need to focus on getting their players healthy. Don't rush anyone back. You'd rather have them for the playoffs than right now. They don't have to worry about anyone else losing. They have the playoffs on their side. So this is a point where you're getting towards the end of the season. They have weaker opponents for the most part going into the rest of the season. I believe I know they have the Braves one more time, and they might have the Mets one more time. But other than that, they are set for the season. They have the Braves and then the Blue Jays and then the Braves again. And then they have the Cubs and the Nationals. So
The Blue Jays are tough. The Braves are tough.
the Braves are tough. So 7 total games against the Braves and 2 against the Blue Jays. And then they close it out with
The Astros,
three.
which is that's you're gonna lose those.
Oh, wait. Oh, I forgot they also play the Astros.
Yeah, you're gonna lose those.
Um, wow, this is a whole rescheduling off of one outing. But okay, so they now close the season with the Astros. That's not exactly ideal. This was looking a lot more favorable about a month ago when they only had easy games left. But like I said, you're at a point where you just want to be splitting the Braves and you want to split the Blue Jays, and then obviously win the games against the Cubs and the Nationals, and try to get one from the Astros, and you're good. I don't think I'll look up Milwaukee's schedule because obviously they're the one that's really on the one that could only really take them out of it. The Padres already have a wild card spot, so I'm not too worried about them. The Brewers are the only one that's actually fighting for a playoff spot. But as long as they go out at least 500, I think
You'll be fine.
they'll be fine. Pulling up the Brewers schedule, they are playing the Yankees right now, which isn't ideal for them. But for the rest of the season, they have, here we go. For the rest of the season, they have the Yankees, the Mets, the Reds, the Cardinals, the Marlins, and the Diamondbacks. So they also have a pretty rough schedule. So I'm not too worried about it, especially since they got rid of Will Hader. So they're close.
Josh Hader.
Is gone. Josh Hader. Why did I say Will Hader? Josh Hader is gone. I'm not too worried about it. You finish out the season 500, you get Castellanos back, you're happy. Keep everyone healthy, go into the playoffs completely healthy, and you're fine. You got Nola, Wheeler, and then whoever you want to. Eflin's coming back too, so they have the pick of their pitchers for the postseason. You'll have your entire offense healthy, and maybe you can scrap out a round one win in the playoffs.
Well, considering it's one game, maybe, but the odds
It's
aren't
not
there.
one game. It's now best of
Oh yeah, best of
five
three.
or best. Is it best of three or best of five?
I think it's best of three.
I'll pull it up real quick. Because I don't remember off the top of my head. But uh with that, that's really here we go. Best of three in the wild card round. So I think they could scrap out a round one win.
But
Whether it's pretty or not, that's a different discussion.
well, if it's the Mets, I mean Scherzer and DeGrom.
If it's the
No,
Mets, yeah, I don't like
no,
the odds.
no.
But
Even if it's the Braves, no.
if it's the Braves, I like the odds 10 times better. Because like I said, they've in the second half, they've gotten the best of the Braves. They've been winning the series against the Braves.
They've been winning, but I still think the Braves are the better team.
No doubt the Braves are the better
Yeah.
team. But it's, I mean, in the second half, I'm looking at the split between the first half and the second half. They have gotten the better of the Braves in the second half as opposed to the first. So if
That's
I had to choose
interesting.
between those two, I'm choosing the Braves. But ultimately, the Cardinals are. But that's really all we got left for the MLB coming up on the playoffs. One thing before we just finish out here with the NHL, I want to tell you guys to check out our friends at Bomberger Food Truck. They're a semi-new food truck now, getting a little bit older the more we talk about it, but opened by two guys that we have known for a while. We went to elementary school with them all through high school. Two college-age kids, trying to make the best of an opportunity that they had. So they have great burgers, a new special almost every weekend. I'm personally a really big fan of the Bomb Burger, their namesake. That's their most popular burger. They're at Brossman's Farm Stand every weekend in Luckett's on Saturday and Sundays, and they're expanding out even more this weekend, doing more catering, more events, more locations. If you want to check out where they're going to be, you guys can check out their socials at Bomberger Food Truck on Facebook and Instagram, and that'll give you all the updates that they do. And with that, just want to tell you, go check them out. And we are going to go over to the NHL now.
I have nothing on the Caps, but we're just to be talking about the Flyers. So John Tortorella said,
I have the quote. I'm going to pull up the quote just because instead of just trying to give a overview, and I understand where he's coming from a little bit. Obviously, it's not something that you want to hear your head coach say, but it gets a message through, if anything. So he said in an interview, as far as the room, I have major concerns about the room. As far as I've spent the summer going back and forth, I live in New York. I've been going back and forth to Philly, trying to relocate there, but spent some time in the office talking to players, talking to personnel, talking to the general manager, Chuck Fletcher, and I have concerns about what goes on in there. Before we even step on the ice, situations and standards and accountability in the room is forefront. You can't get squat done on the ice until you get your room straightened out, and I think we have a little bit of work to do there.
yeah,
Now,
so this goes along with what have been saying. I think this is just him weeding out the guys in the locker room that aren't going to be 100% committed. And I think that this is Tortorella is a winner. He knows what it takes to win. So I think this is ultimately a good thing for the locker room. I know it's not what you want to hear, but I ultimately think this is good. It's nothing to really scoff at, because unless all the players start to revolt, like if the players are mad at this statement, then I think the statement's about them.
yeah,
So I think they
agree.
should just take this as motivation to just work harder and listen to him and just get down to business.
Now this article says right after that quote, that's not great, which tell me that's not something that I wouldn't say. But
Yeah.
that I agree with you. If you're a player who sees that and you're like, "Oh, what is wrong with John Tortorella?" You're probably one of the issues.
You're the issue, and you're probably not going to be here in say 2 years.
I would agree with what Tortorella said. I mean, obviously with Giroux gone, you have a huge gap in the captaincy. And John Tortorella said he's in no rush to name the captain. This is it's now about, which I would agree with him there. If you don't give a captaincy, you then leave it to someone to step up and take hold of the locker room at that time. So I like what he's doing, and I like the way he's going about it and kind of letting the players figure it out. I don't, not like entirely letting them figure it out. So, but he's kind of letting them be the forefront of it and letting them be the main solvers of the problem. Like you said, though, he's a winner. He knows how to win, and I think he's going to be a good coach for this type of city. Uh, but I don't think this is really anything to be too worried about.
No.
Um, I think he's got a lot of pieces to work with, and I think he can bring out the best in them. I'm not too worried about it. Ultimately, until they get onto the ice, I'm not worrying about anything. I just want to wait and see until they play.
And this year,
They're
I wouldn't even put too much pressure on them. I think this is a year where you just need to see
yeah,
noticeable growth from your young players. That's it.
exactly. As long as you can see growth from your players,
You're
that's what
good.
you want to see. But I mean, like, and you're not trying to win. As long as like there's one like James Van Riemsdyk, people are asking if he's still going to be on the team. He's one who at the deadline, if you're losing and he's putting up numbers, let him walk. Like the
Yeah.
only way you keep Van Riemsdyk is if he's putting up numbers and you're in a wild card spot. It's the only way you keep him. Like this is really not that big of a year. Obviously, you want to win as a professional athlete. Uh, Losing sucks in any realm, no matter what you're doing. But the you like you said, you need to see growth in your players. This is just a year for everyone to mesh together, get a hold of the coach. And from what I've heard, I've been listening to a Flyers podcast and he interviews the players and he always asks them, what do you think of Torts? And they always say, I hear he's a great coach. Like, yes, you have what you hear throughout the league that he's a hard head, he's a hothead, and like everything's my way or the highway, but they're like, sometimes it's you need the hard coaching. So
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it. I think Torts is going to be a great coach for this city for the tenure that he will have here. And I'm just excited for the season to start. Despite the team maybe not being great, I'm not too worried about it. He's noticing the issue, and that's always the first step to solving the issue is figuring out the problem. So nothing I'm too worried about there. Well, with that, we are going to end it off there. You guys can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at BL in the DC. You can DM us questions, comments. You can email us questions at comments at blinthedc@gmail.com. Rate us on Apple and Spotify and leave us a review on Apple. And with that, that's all we have. So we will see you guys next week.